Welcome to Insatiable, the podcast where we discuss the intersection of food, psychology, and culture.
People don't give themselves enough credit. They think if they're not in the gym slinging a barbell that they're not working out. And that is so not true. The gym is our weird modern way of replicating the working with animals, the working on the farm, the slinging hay bales. Like that is what we're training for, right? Like it counts. It fully counts.
I'm your host, Ali Shapiro, an integrated health coach, 32-year and counting cancer survivor, and have radically healed my relationship with food and my body. And for the past 17 years, I've been working with clients individually, in group programs, and in company settings to do the same. Welcome. The information in this podcast should not be considered personal, individual, or medical advice. Today, we welcome back insatiable fan favorite Liz Wolfe to help us debunk the top 3 myths that we kind of see going around in the wild wellness world that is this moment. Liz came on and we chatted all about some interesting topics, lots of tangents, and it was kind of like old school podcasting where you just like had like your best girlfriend and you're just chit-chatting. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy today's episode. And especially for those of you who have perfectionist tendencies, we ended up peeling back behind a little bit of the psychology behind perfectionism and how it keeps these myths going. But the good news is that movement, muscle, and even weighted vests don't have to be as big of a deal as they've been made out to be. And you can do what we talk about instead today. All right, a little bit more about Liz. Liz is a nutritional therapy practitioner, certified personal trainer, and best-selling author who encourages women to embrace their inner and outer badass while keeping their efficiency high and the drama low. She's the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Eat the Yolks, host of the Ideal Age podcast, and founder of the Ideal Age supplements and Daily Aminos Plus. She also has creatine now, and creator of the Own Your Metabolism program. And Liz is an all-around, just great, informed practitioner and hilarious. So enjoy today's show. Liz, welcome back to Insatiable.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I'm always game for an episode of Insatiable.
So first, I want to ask you, are you excited for Taylor's new album to drop?
I definitely am. I think that my daughter is a little bit, she dips in and out of the Swiftie-ism now for what she got really into country music, like Lainey Wilson. There's another Lainey that she really likes. We're fully in like K-pop Demon Hunter soundtrack right now, which you may or may not.
I've heard of it, but we have not seen it.
This slaps, which is probably a very dated expression to use, but that's fine because I'm 42 and I'm just now starting to use it. But I feel like it's like it slaps. It's poppy. It's
Oh, it slaps. I didn't even know that was an expression. I'm 47, so I missed the cut.
It slaps. I think it is probably. I'm probably 2 years late on that on that expression, but it's good. It's pretty good. But we're gonna see the movie, which I'm just learning. She releases these movies with like every album. I don't know. I am not a Swiftie. I'm kind of like a Swiftie by proxy.
Yeah.
But we're gonna, and obviously like Travis Kelce, who I think is the most adorable human in the entire world. Hot. He's all the vectors, like all of the like buckets of attractiveness. He's like cute, hot, sexy, sweet. Like it's all the things. So I have
athletic, high standard. Yeah.
tall.
Yeah.
All of that. So I'm into it. Anything Taylor or Taylor adjacent, I feel like I'm into it.
Yeah. Well, you and I like text about like more their like love story and like what it represents to all of us. And
what was that article we liked? It was like the brilliant boringness of Travis Kelce or something. I can't.
Yeah.
I loved this headline so much. The defiant conventionality of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And I was like, that's basically it, but I love it.
Yeah, we're recording this, everyone, on October 2nd. So it was my birthday yesterday. My friend, one of my best friends from high school, were meeting up for coffee, and her daughter is a Swiftie. Like, she took her to the concert that they ended up recording for Disney. I forget which one it was in California, but she's like, I fully expect you to listen to the album before we get there. And I'm like, I don't think I'm that into it. Like, I kind of get sucked into it, but I'm like, all right, I'll listen to it on the car ride over. So
Good. I mean, it's something for us to do, right?
yeah, yeah. We all need something to take us out of the vortex of the global situation we got going
Just
on.
the general crises that are like flooding our consciousness right now. Yeah. We need some orange. I don't look good in orange though. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Wait, the orange of the color of her
Or
album?
like the new everything's going to be orange. Like the new Life of a Showgirl. It's like the Empire State Building went orange and everything's orange. And all I can think of is Elle Woods going, "Whoever said orange was the new pink was seriously disturbed." That's all I can think about. Not my color.
Oh, well, speaking of orange, it's Halloween season, and like, mom joke incoming. I was walking before we started the podcast, and I saw like all the Halloween decorations, and I'm like, when there's something strange in your Instagram feed, what you gonna do, or who you gonna call? Mythbuster, Liz Wolfe.
I love that. And also, were you walking in your weighted vest? Because that is all.
Yeah.
Was that going to be your segue and I just ruined it?
Well, I mean, I think we'll get to the weighted vest. That'll be the teaser. We'll get there last. So people hang in for like, what does Liz Will think about the weighted vest?
Nobody cares.
But we're going to talk about some myth busting today, because I think all of us who have some sort of expertise, like, look out, and with the wellness and perimenopause, menopause, health, all of it has just gone beyond crazy. Like, do you agree, or is that just like, am I the only one rolling my eyes?
No, I'm totally rolling my eyes. I joked like months ago, like it's like ads in my feed for like how to clean the toilet in perimenopause. Like you need to clean your toilet differently. It's like everything, you're just slapping the word perimenopause on anything and everything. It's wild.
It should be, you're not going to clean the toilet as much in perimenopause because you have so many less fucks to give, you know?
You're like a very precious, like very small number of fucks to give, and my toilet is not. It does not receive one of those fucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
So I think like, we can all look at crazy, but I think what's challenging is we still don't know like what we need to know to challenge the crazy. Like, it's all become normalized in a way. So that's what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today. So for example, everywhere you're turning, it's like strength training, strength training, strength training. And it's like, and a lot of what I work on with clients is this like either or mentality. And it's like, okay, so either I'm doing strength training or I am going to have osteoporosis, fall, break my hip, and have a 50% chance of death, at
Yeah,
50.
you're gonna die immediately.
Yeah.
Which actually, you do have a pretty good chance of dying. Like after, I worry about this with my parents. Like we need to maintain their mobility and all of that. But yes, continue.
Yeah. So it's like you need your strength, and you talk a lot about agility. And I think this is that, like, what's not being talked about is what makes it even easier to go down the crazy. So what we need strength training, and
This is where we're going to make it really overwhelming for a second, but then we'll rein it back in. So first I'll be overwhelming, right? We don't just need strength. We don't just need, and I think people are kind of confusing strength with muscle mass. And there's like some crossover in what we need to be concerned about there, of course, and we can kind of tease that apart. But there is a big difference between muscle quality and muscle quantity. Like there is not an exact amount of muscle mass that correlates with the like exact amount of strength. Does that make sense? It's all about
yes.
your muscle quality. So there is like, we need to be talking about strength, maybe probably more so than just muscle mass. Also, and it also depends like how old you are, whether you're trained or detrained, conditioned or deconditioned. There are so many, like, do you check this box? Do you check that box before you can really start being like prescriptive for people? But on top of that, on top of the strength and the muscle quality, like we need to be thinking about stability, agility, mobility, balance, all of those things. Power, there are so many other components to having a healthy, resilient body. Flexibility is one that people, I think, probably place a little bit too much emphasis on just because it's a topic that, it's a word that we've known since forever. Like, you stretch, you need to be flexible, whatever. I'm actually talking to a lot more hypermobile people lately, which is kind of strange. I didn't know there were so many of us out there. But like hyper flexible, I used to go to yoga class and people would be like, were you a ballerina? And I'd be like, no, but thank you. And what they were really complimenting me on was something that they probably should not be complimenting me on, which is that I was way hypermobile, which can actually lead to injury. So we kind of have both sides of the spectrum. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make, and I'm putting a long tail on this kite, is that there are a lot of things that we need to be concerned with in addition to strength. I know that people talk about, muscle mass and strength kind of being our ticket to survivability. But if you cannot use your strength in functional ways, then you're still sort of set up for failure. If you can't catch yourself when you trip forward, if you don't have like the ankle dorsiflexion to be able to stay upright under, varying conditions, then that is where those risks start to sort of pile up. And when you think about something like strength training, as it is kind of being discussed now, people are talking about like deadlifts and maybe not so much squats as you get older because people don't always want to load the spine in that way. But we're talking about lifting in a way that is not necessarily speaking to the dynamism of real life, like the way we actually move, rotate, all of that. So if you're not keeping that in mind when you're training, and I'm not trying to overwhelm people, the simplest thing is like you just find a program that trains in, multiple different ways while training strength. But if you're not thinking about that, if you're just going and sitting on some machines, doing some deadlifts, doing some, leg extensions and hamstring curls and stuff like that, what are you actually going to use that strength for? Can you actually apply it in real life? And I think that conversation is kind of getting lost because it's not simple and it's not, soundbite friendly.
I also think a big part of my work is helping people realize that health is so much more than your weight, right? If for those of us in the 80s or 90s, we've been grew up then or before, it's like health was defined as thinness. And so a lot of what gets clicks and engagement is, okay, strength is going to help change your body composition, right? Which we then think like will help us lose weight. So the conversation, we think it's evolved and we need to talk about strength training, but no one's out there going like, I'm going to do mobility or agility so that, I don't fall. I can catch myself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm
So I can
guessing is
push
probably.
the lawnmower so that I can like lean over and garden so I can pick the keys up off the ground. Like those are little things, but we kind of got to train for that too, because that's when the bad stuff happens, right? You're not seeing people break a hip at the gym. You're seeing people break a hip at home, walking to open the cabinet door, that type of thing.
Well, and you're making me think of like the everyday reasons why people would want to pay attention to this stuff. And I'm thinking about like how much longer it takes you to recover from an injury when you're older. Like it doesn't matter if you have like a red light wand or a sauna or like it just takes longer to recovery. And so are you saying that part of this agility, flexibility, mobility is to help prevent even injury and making sure that we're moving in the right ways versus almost doubling down on like the imbalances we had. Like I just have a dear friend. She rides horses and like the horse stepped on her foot and she's been in pain. She's going through perimenopause. She's like, I need a fan everywhere. I'm like, no one understands it until you're in it. But she went and got x-rays and she has like this severe tendonitis and she thinks it's and the doctor too, like from years of wearing heels. Like she lived in New York City. She wore heels all these places, right? And then she starts getting active, right, in her horseback ride and stuff. But that's an example of like she should be tending to mobility, flexibility, and agility,
Yes.
right?
Yes. That is so. And also, one of the things you said, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it's like, I think when we talk about strength training kind of in this weird abstract way that we've been talking about it on the internets, it's almost like they're talking about that in terms of death prevention, just like your survivability is lower. But when we talk about all of these other aspects of physical conditioning, like being in the condition to tackle everyday life for the long haul, that's injury prevention. That is really getting into the nitty gritty there. And I think this is where, total tangent, I think this is where it's so valuable. This changed my life because this is what I did. If you're ready to get moving and you don't want to, like you said, double down on sort of your limitations, which I think in IRL, where that shows up is like, I want to move, but I'm not comfortable doing this thing. So I'm just going to do what I'm good at or what I know how to do. And I'll give an example. I don't think he'll ever listen to this. If he does, sorry, Dad, I love you. My dad has movement restrictions. He doesn't spend all his time leaning into those movement restrictions and trying to facilitate a broader, menu of movement options for himself. He does what he knows he's good at, right? He loves pickleball, so he will kind of train to pickleball a little bit. He will go on walks and things like that. But if I could pick the perfect program for my dad or for anybody, it would be like, number one, start by booking an appointment with a personal trainer. And I'm going to bring all of this together at some point. But if you can sit down with a personal trainer just for one session, you don't have to commit for the rest of your life, but to be able to have somebody who is a professional put their eyes on you and say, hey, I'm actually seeing that we need to start with your feet, like with your toes, with your toe splay. Like I was just talking to Dr. Emily Splickle, who is podiatrist, a human movement specialist. She's the creator of the brand Neboso, which I love. And she's friggin' brilliant. She was talking about how your feet are like the gateway to the entire rest of your body, that you have fascial lines that go from your toes to your tongue. And if we are not really looking at how our feet are anchoring us to the floor, how they are, how our nervous system is kind of programmed through our feet, like we are leaving a ton of money on the table. And we also, jumping right into a program may make ourselves more vulnerable to injury. So that's kind of like that trade-off, right? Like we're scared to do anything, but it's also kind of scary to not do anything, or that fear of doing it wrong. I get that. But I think we can kind of give people a roadmap for getting healthier and becoming more resilient and resistant to death and injury. I don't think it's as complicated as I am making it right now as we speak.
Well, no, but you're kind of explaining like why we should care and like how the sausage is made in a way, right? Like we want the tactics and we'll get there, but I think it's important for people to understand, like you even saying like the nervous system is programmed in the feet. Like everybody's doing like somatic breathing and they're doing orientation exercise, which is all great. But it's like so much of you can naturally tend to your nervous system with movement,
Yes.
right? Without
Yeah.
it being a thing.
And I also think this is another tangent, but this is what happens when I come on your show. I think a lot of the benefits that people are getting from grounding amount to sort of majoring in the minors, where we're like talking about electrons and whatever energy transfer from the ground, the earth to your feet. I think just the nervous system input that you're getting from having your bare feet against a natural surface with, small variations in terrain, in kind of, texture and all of that. Dr. Splickle talks about texture as well. I think that is probably just as powerful in that interaction between us and the earth, is just enabling our feet to feel those different textures, the terrain. And I don't know what she calls it. Maybe it's energy transfer or energy rebound or something. I can't remember. But I think that probably has a huge impact, beyond what we're just talking about, what grounding supposedly does.
Yeah. So let's give some examples of what mobility and agility are. Because again, a lot of people listening to the show are perfectionists. So I think they think agility is, all right, I got to start doing some 100-meter sprints like I did in high school track that I hated because I was wearing Umbros that were too small for me. Or is that just like through my mind?
Okay. So I think mobility for me would probably come first, especially if I was talking to somebody who was detrained, basically. And all it is like the ability of your joint to move through a full range of motion in a controlled manner. So my trainer introduced this to me like 7 years ago, controlled articular rotations, CARS. It sounds really complicated, but all it is really patterning your range of motion. You've got shoulder CARS, right? We're putting in under control, not like woof, people like to do arm circles or whatever. That's not what we're talking about. But when we're actually doing these controlled articular rotations, we are putting these joints through their full range of motion. And for some people, that really is about reclaiming that range of motion, because a lot of us have lost that. But this is something that I do before any workout. I will make sure that I hit my hips, hip CARS, knee CARS, ankle CARS, because everything that's happening, like ankle, knee, goes up the chain and affects everything else. So if I'm hurting in my low back, I'm starting at my ankles and my feet. So we're really kind of making the whole chain work a little bit better. And that's very distinct from agility, which is more kind of your ability to move quickly, right? And efficiently at speed. And that's different for everybody. And agility kind of encompasses the concepts of like balance and coordination and explosiveness and all of that. It's kind of like how you imagine people training for sports. Well, we can do that too. I'm not saying you should go out and do like a NFL combine workout, but we can do things like stepping over, parallettes or those little flat like ladder things. You can order them for like $10, an agility ladder on Amazon, and kind of step in, step out, step in, step out. You can draw a little hopscotch thing with chalk on your driveway and just work on stepping in, stepping out, in, out, out, all kinds of different rhythms that can help build your agility too. And as you're doing that, you can kind of build that into something like jump training, which is really important for bone mineral density, that type of thing. So they all it's kind of a continuum, and they're all translatable kind of along that continuum.
So it sounds like you could almost, I'm thinking of a client who in my group, I adore her. We were kind of chatting because, again, part of my work is to help people expand their understanding of things. So it's like exercise is not just if it's sweaty and you hate it and she was realizing she does a lot of hard work taking care of animals, like 3, 4 hours. Yeah. And she's like, wait, that like counts. I'm like, yes. So I'm thinking for someone like her who's already doing movement, it would be so helpful before she goes to do all of that heavy lifting and heavy like endurance work to like do some sort of like make sure your body's in full range of motion, because what all of us do, and you can correct me because you're the movement expert, but we, like you said, like your dad, we all have these preferences based on where our muscles shorten, long. And this is an easy way to just start to incorporate that stuff into what you're already doing so that you're getting like, you're not reinforcing imbalances that we all have. Is
Yeah,
that accurate?
totally. And first, I'm not a movement expert, by the way. I'm just somebody that likes to mouth off and touch. I have a reasonable grasp of multiple things across multiple disciplines. And I think sometimes I say stuff that's marginally useful, but I'm getting all of my information from the true experts and hopefully helping to synthesize a little bit. But I appreciate you saying that I'm a movement expert. But no, what's so funny about this, number one, people don't give themselves enough credit. They think if they're not in the gym slinging a barbell, that they're not working out. And that is so not true. The gym is our weird modern way of replicating the working with animals, the working on the farm, the slinging hay bales. Like that is what we're training for, right? Like it counts. It fully counts. And if there's any place that it makes her feel sore, that it may, like we can work with that. We can give her a plan to make sure that she is fully capable for the task at hand, whether that's like farm work, animal work, picking up your kids, mowing your lawn, whatever it is, fit for the job,
Yeah. And I was thinking about in perimenopause and menopause, shoulder issues with the estrogen, decline. I mean, sometimes I can feel that. Like even the other day, I talk about functional. It's like he wanted me to give him something in the back seat. And I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, and I was like stuck. And I was like, oh, because I get the shoulder pain.
That's how we sometimes tell people to do their shoulder cars. It's like reaching back into that back car seat. Yeah. And I think it was maybe Katie Bowman, who's a biomechanist, like natural movement expert. I love her. One of my favorite people in the space. And she's been around forever. Not forever, forever. She's very young, but she's been around since I've been doing the thing. I think it was her that talked about like, we're not reaching backwards for anything anymore. We don't have to turn around to watch our six when we're backing out of the driveway or backing out of parking spots, because we have these screens in front of us that are showing us what's going on all around the car. So this is kind of funny. I'm storing our toilet paper in the cabinet behind the toilet. So I'm like, so when I'm sitting there and I got to get the toilet paper out, I got to turn backwards to get that TP out of the cabinet. And I'm like, oh, there we go. Like I'm getting that twisting motion that we just don't have occasion to carry out the way we used to.
And you had mentioned nervous system, because I think, and this is so fascinating to me, how does that benefit our nervous system and ultimately our stress load if we're able to have full range of motion, if we can do that agility stuff, if we have full range of motion and enough flexibility? Like, what is that doing because everyone's stressed. And if we can, like, I'm all about the BOGOs, like,
Yes.
do dogos, do one, get one free. Like, what does that do to our nervous system when we have access to our, what ideally is our natural full range of, I'm going to just call it body equanimity. I don't know.
Body, just that our full range of possibility, like the full range of possibilities, like the extent of what our bodies can do if they are whole and healthy. And I think that probably answers the nervous system question is, I talk about safety signals all the time. And this has been a really interesting evolution for me. I was really deep into talking about the safety signals we send ourselves through food. And as I did so, and as I saw people have some success in my programs, I started to realize that their success was probably not only due to the food that they were eating, but it was because movement was like 50% of the program. And it is another way we communicate that we are safe, that we're capable, that we have the resources that we need to live and survive. It could probably be said more eloquently. I'm just about to start my nervous system regulation practitioner training in like a week. So I'm really excited. And that is why I enrolled in that course, because I want to better understand how those things, how those pieces fit together, and how kind of the ultimate arbiter of our success in life, actually being able to do what we want to do, how we want to do it, when we want to do it, is probably the nervous system. And there's so many different ways to look at that. I'm still learning, but it is fascinating.
Yeah. So I think for people listening, when you think about doing agility or mobility, like Liz talked about, I think one of the biggest incentives to do it is that it can prevent injury, which can then, and just pain, which then makes you want to move less. And what she's saying is like that we go to the gym so we can move more outside of the gym. And it's so easy to slow down, and that escalates faster as we age. So to me, what you're saying is the agility, the mobility, like all of that is like lubricating your joints. It's preventing injury so you can keep the momentum going that you have not only in your fitness and health life, but like your life in general.
Yeah. And so that when you're walking down the sidewalk and you trip over a crack, you can catch yourself and you're not out of the game for 6 weeks because you jacked up your knee.
Or even roll your ankle. I rolled my ankle the other day.
Oh, it's so bad. It hurts so bad. And I don't know how. It's youth, right? It's just not fair. I don't know how I wore the shoes that I wore and walked on them, on the surfaces I walked on them, and how I maintained any like strength in my toes or my ankles, and now I can trip wearing barefoot shoes. It's ridiculous.
Wait, so are you saying that we could build muscle mass in our toes?
Well, yeah, you can build muscle mass anywhere there's muscles. And I don't think, I don't do this often, but my trainer who I still work with, Nick, he had me like articulating my big toe. Like we were getting that nitty gritty for a while. And it's crazy. It's just crazy how some of this stuff. And I like how you said BOGO, or what did you say?
Oh, dogo, like do one, get another, like benefit free.
Yeah, it's kind of like that habit stacking, modality stack thing. I don't want to have to do one more thing. This is part of the reason I don't do the sauna I don't do the cold plunge for other reasons, but I can't add one more thing. I can give the gym 3 hours a week at best, maybe 2. I know I need to walk, but I can't go on a walk most of the time. So I'm working and walking on my walking pad. So I'm habit stacking those 2 things. And I'm doing all of these things at the gym. Any program I make, we are building in like unilateral work, like single leg work, which is a great way to work on balance. We're working in agility. We're working in moving in different planes. We're working on twisting. We're working on moving laterally. You can do all of that stuff in your strength training. You just have to have the right program. So I want to like double down on that and say, you don't have to go adopt a new habit that steals another hour out of your life that you don't have to give. You can stack all of these things.
I'm glad you said that, because I think time constraints are a huge reason why Americans aren't healthy. It's like, we got to work all the time. It's like, hey, mom, got to go to work. So I'm glad that you said that. It's just, you want to make sure that your programming includes agility and mobility and flexibility. And I'll just say, as someone who like goes to the gym, like before my class, like 5 minutes early, like I just do it to stretch. It just feels good. Like, and it also, you can use it like for me, it's like, okay, like I just came from the house. Essa was probably, screaming about something. It's just, I mean, kids are just intense. So it's like, okay, this is like my transition time to like, it's only 5 minutes, but I do some mobility work that like I just found, of like that I learned from my old trainer. And it's like, it's not a big thing. It's just prepping me so that the workout feels better. I don't injure myself and I can keep the things going.
Well,
So
sometimes I don't do it at all. Sometimes I don't have time for it and I go straight into a deadlift. I know my body well enough now where I'm like, that's really not a good idea today. Or, yeah, I feel like I can go right into my workout today, but I'll also put it in between, right? I'll do shoulder cars in between sets of my main lift, So instead of just sitting there resting and diddling around with my phone, which by the way, we all have a lot of hours that get sucked up just scrolling. That, I mean, I have to admit that myself, but there are a lot of places we can work in these little things throughout the day. And it does become habit because you start to feel so much better.
yeah. Well, I think this brings us to the second myth because I'm thinking the perfectionist mindset, which is really a protection strategy, but people identify as perfectionism, tend to build everything up. And so I'm glad that you said, like, because if we build it up, we think, oh, we're going to get fantastic results. And if we don't do it, we're going to get the worst results versus like everything's kind of a mixed bag. Everything gets you, just gets you closer. But when you're talking about this program, I think some people may think like, oh, if I if I take 10 to 15 minutes to do my mobility, agility, flexibility work, I'm not going to be building as much muscle as I could, right? So I want you to help bust some myths. And this has been revelatory for me over the past couple of years, not even realizing that I was unconsciously assuming I could build as much muscle as possible. How much muscle can we actually build? And how hard is it to actually maintain and not lose muscle? So I want to talk about that as a myth because I think there's this assumption that you can just build as much muscle to burn more calories and weight. Again, most people want to do that for weight loss and body composition and health. But I just think a lot of people don't even get started because they're like, if I can't do this perfectly and gain the most muscle, when you actually realize like it's not that big of a number, it just takes some of the pressure and then can be fun. So I'm going to stop talking.
No,
I'm,
I should stop talking. I
no, I
talk
don't even
way
know.
too
Do
much,
you
but
understand my question?
yeah, well, there's so many things there. There's the fact that we have been educated to look at muscle as a like calorie burner. And I've said this before, and God, I haven't talked about this in a couple of months now. So my facts are probably a little bit messed up, but I think for each like pound of muscle that we put on, we burn an additional like 7 to 10 calories. So if you manage over the course of a year to not only work out in a way that allows you to build muscle, and again, like I said at the beginning, it depends on who you are, how detrained or trained you are, and also your genetic potential for putting on or not putting on muscle. Something that's actually really interesting is that people who are kind of genetically able to build muscle more quickly also tend to lose it more easily. So it's like easy come, easy go. So that's another factor. Your genetics are a factor. So all of that, it just kind of depends. But if you have the genetic capability, the genetic propensity to build a lot of muscle and you happen to manage to build like 10 pounds of muscle in a year, you're burning like 100 extra calories. And that's like your 100-calorie pack. Like, come on. I would much rather get a walking pad, walk on that a half an hour a day while I'm working, adding a good, habit and worry about those 100 calories that way. Like, I don't look at muscle as a calorie burner. I just think that's just being really rude to muscle because muscle does so many other amazing things besides that like particular metabolic action. So another thing that I think is wrapped up in there, and I've talked to people about this over the last year or so, when all of this, you got to build muscle stuff started being talked about, right? And we have these really like badass women doctors out there who are like 6% body fat and, flipping tires and being like, no excuses. And I'm like, I have many excuses and I will use all of them as often as I want. But the thing I hear people say is like, I have been working so hard. I've been eating so much protein, because that's another thing that you also have to do. You can't just build muscle from nothing. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and I'm not gaining any muscle. Like I've been doing the in-body scan or I did my DEXA scan. I don't have any more muscle than I had before. And what I say is, number one, you may be at your your full genetic potential right now. If you're doing all things, if you're eating enough, because if you want to put on muscle, you have to eat a lot of protein and also probably be in a calorie surplus for most people. I think it's possible to build muscle without being in a surplus, but you have to eat like 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight or something crazy. And there are ways to manipulate your macros, but do we really want to go down that road of being so, like you say, overly perfectionistic? It does not add to our lives in any meaningful way. And the third thing that's wrapped up in there is what we talked about at the beginning, which is strength is not the same as muscle mass. So those folks who are like, I've been working so hard to build muscle, I haven't added any to my frame. I want to be like, well, how much more are you lifting in your deadlift? How much can you do? Because you can probably do a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for, because we are confusing how strong and powerful you are with how much actual muscle mass is on your frame. We're confusing quality with quantity.
So what everyone's saying, Liz, is like your muscle may not go up on the in-body or whatever measurement you're using, but the quality of it and that strength matters for longevity, injury prevention. Right? Like, is there anything else that the quality matters for?
Oh my God, your power, your explosiveness, everything. Like what you can do with your muscle is not necessarily a reflection of how much muscle you have. To a point, yeah, you have to have muscle to be able to use the muscle effectively and build capacity and strength and all of that. But I share sometimes, you and I have talked about this before, when I was on my weight loss journey, I lost 10 pounds of muscle, but my lifts, my major lifts, all increased because I was training like I should. I was working really hard with no expectations. I didn't know which way that was going to go, but you can lose muscle and increase strength. That's possible. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying I think that helps us kind of understand how muscle works a little bit better.
Yeah. And when you were talking about if someone's deconditioned versus conditioned, it made me think of, I was just chatting with a client I'm going to start to work with, and she was saying, kind of, she's like addressing like the menopause transition that she's going through. And she got on I think it was a DEXA scan or an in-body, but she was like, I actually have so much muscle because I'm heavy. I'm like heavier than and I was like,
She's wearing a weighted vest around.
yeah. And that's for people who, again, in perfectionism, if we think like, I haven't been doing anything, like it's a catastrophe because it's imperfect. No, like if you're carrying extra weight around, you may have more muscle than someone who, hasn't been carrying that weight around. So I think what you're pointing out is like the individuality of like your genetics, condition, decondition, are you pulling it around? But then also, even 10 pounds of muscle to me sounds like so much. Like, just to give some perspective, I went like on my in body when I started lifting, and I was, postpartum and menopausal at the same time. It's like when I look at the net, I ended up losing like 20, 25 pounds, but I only ended up gaining like maybe 2 to 3 pounds of muscle. I forget exactly. And that was over 4 years.
Oh, awesome that you're in a net positive.
Right. But again, I think people think you can just add endless pounds of muscle versus being like, I am in a net positive, but I fought for, like, I lifted 3 times a week. I had to track my food to be able to sleep. So it was like, and I hate tracking food, but I have to do it for my sleep. So it's like, and I did want to lose some weight. So it was, a BOGO there. But I just, like, I thought that I had failed in some way when the reality is it's like, thank God I was able to put some muscle on, and I mean, I still have probably higher body fat that's healthy, but I'm like, okay, I guess I have to focus on losing that because I just don't think I can gain much more muscle. Like, and
Yeah.
that's
And how much
okay.
you
Like,
want to
that's,
put yourself through.
I don't, that's the problem. I want to do enough to be healthy, but I just don't care about like maximizing it. But I just think that's important for people to get these kind of numbers. Like if you are in perimenopause or at menopause, like it's just not an unlimited amount of muscle. Like even a couple of pounds adding both strength, like quality and quantity can make a big difference, especially if it entails fat loss at the same time from that muscle.
Yeah. And that's if you are actively on a weight loss journey, the reality may be that if you cannot be pretty detailed about how much you are moving your body and how much you are eating, it may be that you're going to lose a little bit of muscle. And okay, like this is your choice. And I'm not saying you can choose the right thing or you can choose the wrong thing. Choice is yours, but don't choose wrong. I'm saying we're all making different calculations in real time. It's like if you are feeling like your body fat is presenting a problem, if it's contributing to inflammation, if it's contributing to discomfort, and you have behaviors you need to change around that. Obviously, you found the right girl, like you're with Allie already, but like let's talk through these kind of things that people don't want to talk about, where it's like, okay, the reality is you might lose a little bit of muscle. And guess what? If you're training, if you're doing your best to take care of yourself, you're still most likely going to come out on top. We'll deal with that later. We will, because you can continue to build your muscle quality even as you lose some in that, you're doing those, that's your, however you want to calculate that. I can't tell you what's right or wrong, but you can still tend to your muscle quality throughout that process, even if you're going to lose a little bit. Now, if you are somebody that's like, I just want to not necessarily lose body fat, but just be as healthy as I can be, I feel like the two things you need to think about are eating enough and exercising enough to stimulate that to create that anabolic stimulus where you're actually like not losing muscle. Because I think oftentimes people, and I understand this, they only have the headspace for one or the other. They only have the headspace to kind of fix the food, or they only have the headspace to work out. And I understand that. It's different from person to person. I am in my like start with movement era, but for a long time I was in my start with food era. But in that case, it is worthwhile, I think, to really be aware of how your habits are impacting your muscle and your energy for working out, because we can accidentally undereat, on purpose undereat, especially using these weight loss peptides. Like there is a real risk undereating to the point that you are in a breakdown state. And we don't necessarily want that. And again, this is why you work one-on-one with somebody, because these are really, really hard things to see objectively unless you're working with a professional.
Yeah. Now I'm just like, I guess this is kind of a selfish question. Like if someone is like, they lose the weight and they're like, okay, now it's time. Do you think they can put on more muscle? Or I guess it depends. Are they going to have to overeat to then gain weight to put on more muscle? And I'm thinking about it for myself, where I'm like pretty happy with my weight.
Yeah. Practitioners guide people in different ways. For the most part, what I hear practitioners saying is build the muscle first and then try to lose the fat. For some people, that is psychologically untenable because they call it a bulking phase for a reason, it is what it is. And so I think most people are more comfortable working on losing weight or fat first, hopefully maintaining muscle, and then going into a muscle building, you can call it hypertrophy phase. It just kind of depends on where you're at psychologically and what your life looks like. Did I even answer the question?
Yeah, no, I think you're saying it's possible, but it's also like, why is that your goal? Essentially, is what I kind of like.
I
Is
mean,
that
do
what?
what you want.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things too that I was thinking about earlier was we both have worked with extreme perfectionists, and there is a nervous system, like you said, I think you said a nervous system component to perfectionism. It's similar to being that person that has to research and research and research. And this is why I'm good at what I do. I'm good at connecting dots, is because I have a nervous system problem where I cannot stop consuming information because I want to find the one answer. And I think the truth is, I had to realize that the actual perfection is in accepting the imperfection and the lack of clarity and just making a move and gathering information. And if I need to back out and make a different move, I'll do that too. But it's a nervous system thing, needing to always be perfect or needing to not do anything until you have 100,000 little bits and bobs of information in your arsenal. And so it becomes dysfunctional at a certain point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's trying to mitigate like the mess, right? Like the messiness of just taking an action. But again, I think we think the payoff of and there are benefits to perfectionism, right? Like I can just see the perfectionist being like, maybe you haven't experienced the benefits of doing things perfectly. And I get it. It's like a defense mechanism. And that is true. And a lot of perfectionism is about mitigating risk, right? If I find the answer, right, like it's going to all work out the way that I want it to, versus that's what I was saying. Like, usually you make a move, you learn some stuff, you're like, oh, that didn't work, but I made some progress, But for a lot of my clients, yeah, it's like, I mean, we're going to get into the psychological aspect of it, which influences nervous system. It's like they say, I don't want to be with the mess of like the messy imperfection, but it's a story of like, I'm left alone with the mess, right? That it's from like their past and stuff like that. So it's like, ugh. And messiness is complex. Like you said, like I have to make a move and then maybe I need to pull back and pivot and understand where to go from there. And it's like, oh, if someone's promising me a way out of all of this chaos and complexity, of course I'm going to buy that. I mean, I don't, you know?
Yep. Or at least, or I'm going to follow it on Instagram. Maybe I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to follow that on Instagram. And yeah, yeah.
Fantasy a lot. Well, and actually, speaking of nervous system, I mean, now we're kind of going off on a tangent, but for some clients, especially with body and food, there's so much shame that whenever that imperfection strikes, they go into flight. And that flight nervous system response creates fantasy thinking. Diet starts tomorrow. Oh my God, I'm going to go find the perfect plan. Oh, this is it. I'm going to sign up for this. But it's a flight nervous system response of like, how do I actually get out of this imperfection that creates the thoughts? So that's not everybody, but that is like a lot of what diet starts tomorrow about. It's like out of this messy imperfection that I just ate too much cake and like tomorrow it's all going to be simple. It's like I can't be with that.
Well, does that generally turn out to be unsustainable?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, what ends up happening in our stories is like we end up creating the very thing that we're afraid of because we keep using these protection strategies that worked initially, right? It's like, so try to be perfect with Weight Watchers or Whole30 or whatever, right? And then
And you
the
manage it
twist
for 30 days
and what's interesting, like this is how it also kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like a lot of people do, like, let's just take Whole30, for example. They do like last dinner mentality, right? With like carbs for 2 weeks, right? So then it's like, oh yeah, they feel great for 2 weeks on Whole30 because they're going through like these excessive carbohydrate
you're so
stores.
right. All your
Right.
stored
And then it's like,
carbohydrate.
oh my God. And now I'm white knuckling for 2 weeks to be perfect. But really, my body's like, no, this is not working. And I can't white knuckle it longer than 30 days. And then I think I'm at fault and I'm a mess instead of like, no, the approach was messy. Right. So it's like, but no one thinks to question the approach. They just doubt themselves and beat themselves up. So
This is so K-pop Demon Hunters, by the way. If you haven't seen it, you should totally watch it. We'll do a PhD analysis of it. But this idea is these demons, these monsters are they talk in the movie about how they feel nothing, they don't deserve to live, and the actual demons are like, no, shame is all we feel. Like, so there's this whole kind of this subtle undercurrent of like these demons are shame. That is the essence of these monsters that they're fighting. And then there's some like crossover into, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the more you kind of resist that shame, the more it kind of settles in to your psyche.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tao Te Ching is like the greatest philosophical book, in my opinion, says what you resist persists, what you embrace dissolves. I mean, it's the paradox of that, of truth, the paradox of truth. So back to muscle, because I know everyone's like, get to the weighted vest, get to the weighted vest. But I also, because Juliet and I, my former co-host who was on the podcast last week, we were talking about, well, we didn't talk about it on this, but we talked about it on our text message thread of like losing muscle. Because again, if we have perfectionist tendencies, we can very much catastrophize very quickly. And it feels like, all right, if I'm not lifting heavy 3 days a week and I incorporate some agility and mobility and I take time for that and I don't do everything perfectly, my muscle, including muscle quality, now that you know to look for quality too, is just going to waste away. And it's like, it doesn't happen that fast. Is that true? Is that not true?
I can give you kind of a timeline that I think is pretty well established in the literature. I'm glad you brought up the point again about quality versus quantity, because your muscle quality declines before your muscle quantity. So you will become deconditioned relatively quickly. It depends also on how old you are, whether you're trained or detrained, all of that matters. But in general, I think what I have seen in the science is that you would start losing actual muscle mass within like 4 to 6 weeks. So there's this idea of a deload week. There's all kinds of different ways to kind of program in some rest and some self-care that is not working out, although I think working out is self-care. But if you need to take a break, take a break. But just don't let it go on for too long. Take a week, take 2 weeks, do Pilates exclusively for a month. Do like a nervous system reset, do nothing but take a bath for 30 days. That's fine. I think by that point, most of us as adults can kind of pick ourselves up and say, I know what I need to do. I've been joking around with somebody that our 30s was the time to be gentle with ourselves. Now that we're 40, like we need to get the fuck up off the couch, like we need to be like, what am I doing? What am I doing and how am I doing it? And that's difficult because I think a lot of us also reach our 40s in the most dysregulated nervous system state that we've ever been in because we've spent our entire lives trying things that haven't worked. We've blamed ourselves, such a pile of crap, blamed ourselves for things that are not our fault. Like you just said, like a program failing, we blame ourselves instead of blaming the program. So we're under that pile of garbage. But I also think in your 40s is kind of and I mean this in an empowering way, it's a do or die moment. That doesn't mean you need to go start flipping tires. It means that you say, how am I going to figure myself out? It means like you reach out to Ali Shapiro and you're like, what am I really doing? Like, why am I eating this now? All of that, right? And then you figure out what can I do and how can I don't want to say optimize because that's such a biohacker term, but it's like, what can I do? What kind of time can I give to becoming the best version of me, not the best version of whoever created this plan or the best version of whoever I'm watching, whoever my Peloton instructor is, the best version of me. How can I construct that? And let's freaking do it because there's not going to be an easier time. Back to your question, which was how long does it take for us to actually lose meaningful amounts of muscle mass? Probably 4 to 6 to 12 weeks, something like that. And it can take a lot longer to rebuild it. But if you are conditioned, if you are trained versus detrained, then you are going to be able to reach those levels again with relative ease compared to if you start out deconditioned and then you're in a hospital bed for a month, right? Worst case scenario. So it really depends who you are and where you're at in life.
And what do you mean by trained versus detrained?
Oh, that's another spectrum too, right? So I would consider myself trained. I work out 2 or 3 times a week and I probably walk on the walking pad a total of 3 to 4 hours a week. And that's all while I'm working, by the way. I'm not checking out of life. I'm editing podcasts. I'm writing emails. I'm doing all of that while I'm walking. So, but it counts. It totally counts. So I would consider myself trained. And this is what I hope I can help people with in the future. I'm building kind of, I guess I would call it like an accountability framework, because I think the problem is not so much always that we don't know what we need to do, it's that we don't manage to do anything for long enough for it to make a difference. And that's so hard. It's so hard to be consistent with something. And that's where I think something like a nervous system framework for accountability comes in, similar to the Gretchen Rubin 4 Tendencies framework, where you learn how you respond to expectations and how to keep yourself accountable. I am so sure that there is a way to help people become accountable to themselves, that's kind of my big project right now. Because if you know how to keep yourself accountable and you have kind of a formula for that, then you can show up for yourself repeatedly for long enough that it makes a difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We'll have to talk because I actually think those 4 tendencies are rooted in like what's called the socialized mind. I think people think that's who they are versus I think they're belonging protection strategies, like the upholder.
Say more about that. Say more.
Juliet and I did this podcast on this like years ago. I would have much better articulation of that. But like people are like upholders, right? I'm an upholder of rules or whatever, right? And that's kind of like a perfectionist approach to saying like, oh, if I uphold these rules, like people, I'm going to get what I want. And that for what you were just talking about, your 40s, like I call it a portal, right? Like your body discomfort and that garbage that it can be a portal to saying like what actually works for me. But I think all of those tendencies that she outlined are actually how we got all that garbage in the first place. And we actually have to tune into ourselves to think about like maybe I want to uphold, and I'm picking on the upholders, but I forget what the other was, right? Like some of that stuff may make sense, but I don't know if all of it does. And so like what am I upholding, because a lot of people think their own expectations are theirs, but when we start unpacking them in my programs, it's like, where did you come up with that expectation? It's like, oh, I sound like my mother. I sound like my teacher. It's like, okay, so that's my perspective on those. I'm sure there's some truth, but it's having flexibility with those, I guess.
Well, that's why I feel like we need maybe a new way of looking at it, because that makes total sense to me. And what also makes sense to me is that each one of those four tendencies, there's rebel, questioner, upholder, and obliger, are also reflective of nervous system states. So a questioner is in this like loop of looking for certainty. The rebel is probably more of like, there's like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I can't remember what the rebel was. The obliger, which is me, is like, tell me what to do. It's like completely giving yourself over to somebody else, fawning, exactly. But I also think if I had not done that quiz and realized that I tend towards obliging, I would not have realized that I needed a training partner. And I would not have shown up and worked out consistently for going on 8 years now. And I am a completely different person in every way just because of that. So if we can leverage that in a positive way, I'm convinced we can in some way, but in the kind of nuanced way that would be like Allie approved.
Well, and what you're speaking to, because like I identify as the rebel, right? It's like I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, but I'm the counter type that like doesn't care about traditional status. Like we're vain about not being vain. Like we just want to accomplish for security, like right. And it's like all of that stuff will get you started, right? But I bet okay, being an obliger got you started in training, but what has made you do it for 8 years is you found out your own reasons for showing up.
Yeah.
Is that true?
But it probably took 4 years to
Yeah.
find my own reasons. Yeah.
But if someone maybe started questioning you earlier, it might have happened fast. I don't know. So for example, for me, like being a rebel, it was like, oh, I don't like all tradition, right? And I made rebel health choices and all that stuff. And then it's like, I have a kid at 41 and I'm like, why did it take me so long? Like, why did I oh my God, this is what like, and again, kids aren't for everyone. Like, I don't think everyone should have them. Some people know, but I'm like, oh, I thought no one knew what they were talking about with like, kid, do you know, like, so it's like that rebel thing. And it's, so now it's like, okay, I need more flexibility or like, have like, I don't like intervention, but then it was like, okay, I need HRT to be able to sleep at night. Right. And I went through menopause early, so it makes sense. So it's like, all of this stuff can get you started, but eventually you have to come up and say like, I need more flexibility around essentially my identity.
Yeah. Oh, dang it. Something just popped into my head that I thought we should talk about, and then it popped right back out. I'll see if it comes back, I'll write it down and we'll talk about it. But it's kind of in that vein. Hopefully it pops back in. I didn't take my creatine today, so.
Yeah. Well, I was tired before this and Carlos was like, take some of Liz's aminos. And I'm like, I took them during my workout. I don't know if I can take them twice.
I mean, it's an expensive thing to double dip on. I get that.
Well, I just didn't know it was healthy. I was like, I don't know. Can you take them twice in a day?
Yeah, you totally can. I have, this is another funny thing. This probably loops back to the nervous system as well. I know people that are like, every single day, I'm going to take that supplement. And even myself, I don't take my own supplements every day because I am very like, I just don't do a lot of things consistently. On the hierarchy of things that I need to do consistently, it's like I need to get up and eat breakfast and I need to move my body. Those are the two things that I feel like I can be really good about. That's about what I got the bandwidth for. So if I'm going to the gym, I'm bringing my water and I'm bringing my aminos with me. Otherwise, it's not guaranteed. I always feel better. I always think I should have done that, but I just am not super every single day. But if I wanted to take it twice, I totally would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nature is full of novelty and wildness. So it's like everyone wants to do things natural, but it's like nature is fucking out of control.
Mercurial, dude. Yeah.
And the other thing I just want to say too about losing muscle mass or ask you, like, if you are, because I'm thinking of like, I have clients who travel, or right. And it's like, oh, if I can't do it perfectly, like, and then 2 weeks and 3 weeks go by. So now they're like, oh, I'm not even losing all that. But is it like 4 to 6 weeks if like you're lying in bed and not doing a lot of activity? Like if you're still active and like you could probably stretch that further.
Okay, I actually wrote this down to talk about, and I couldn't figure out exactly how to bring it up, but a month off may not destroy everything, right? Because most people, even if they're like in Bali for a month and doing, I don't know why I said Bali, whatever, on
And I'm
vacation,
like, where do you know? I know
being
exactly.
lazy,
That was the rage in female entrepreneurship for a while. Go to Bali and find yourself and
go
your
to
laptop.
Bali, eat, pray, love. No, you're probably still walking. You're still doing the basic like routines of daily life. But I think it is worth saying that there are unexpected things that happen that really do lay you up, like put you in the hospital for a month at a time. And that's what I train for. So if you want to reasonably, loosely plan for a month off, whether that's you're laid up in the hospital where we know muscle mass is your survival currency, or you want to just be as lazy as humanly possible by choice, we are training for those eventualities or those opportunities. That's the whole point of our non-lazy periods training regimens, is that we can afford to throw 4 or 5 weeks away if we have to, right? And so for me, you know, I am training, or I hope my dad or my parents are training for that unexpected hospital stay. Like that's what I'm saving my detraining for, right? If you are not working out, you probably have about 4 to 6 weeks before you really start losing strength. And it's worrisome.
Yeah. That slaps, Liz.
That slaps. Thanks. Thanks.
All right. So we know that we need to incorporate agility, flexibility, and mobility into our strength training. It doesn't have to be more. It just can be part of the programming. We know that we want to build muscle quality and quantity. And yet there isn't an unlimited number of much amount of muscle you can build. And so and you're not going to lose it overnight. And again, I'm thinking less like people planning for a month off and more like how people aren't consistent because they beat themselves up for imperfection, right? Like I was at work and I packed my shoes on my work trip and I didn't get to it. So now it's like, oh, it's all chuck it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God. No, it's like not you're fine.
It's
You're
not just
fine.
like that great meal at an expensive restaurant and your trip to Italy. It's like McDonald's in the airport. It's just like, bleh, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So now the weighted vest. What are your thoughts on the weighted vest?
Weighted vest,
Love
I
it or
think.
list it?
What? Love to list it. Weighted vest. List it. Okay. I was totally bought into this idea, admittedly, before I actually really dived into it, which by the way, it's not dove, it is dived. Dived is the proper, I used that properly. And so I was in. I bought one and it made me so effing uncomfortable when I was walking, right? Like my neck and my shoulders would get all torqued up. It just didn't feel right. And I was like, and I built up, I had a lighter one. I had like 5% of my body weight. And then I moved up to 7 and then 10. And I was like, there's something about this isn't right. And there are quite a few things about the way we are using weighted vests that is probably actually causing more potential for harm than good. And now part of the problem is, of course, that we've created this like amalgam of health outcomes that we think are going to happen because we're wearing a weighted vest that are just not accurate. I feel like some of these big influencers are like, it's great for bone density. And yeah, bone responds to mechanical load. That is absolutely a thing. But from what I can see, like the literature around weighted vests and like osteoporosis and osteopenia is not even remotely conclusive. I think some of the studies, these people were wearing vests for like 10 to 12 hours a day. Who's doing that? Number one, I know, right? Nobody's doing
Sounds like it was sponsored by Big Weighted Vest.
Big weighted vests. And there are different types of weighted vests, but if you Google it, you see these like $250 options pop up. I don't even know what the names are. If you want to send me one, I'll take one. Whatever the company is. But one of the biggest problems about weighted vests that in my experience and the people that I've spoken to and the people that I've had to kind of walk them back out of like weighted vest hell, they're experiencing low back pain, they're experiencing shoulder and neck pain, Achilles tendonitis, like they are not feeling good. And they did not even track it back to these weighted vests. One of the problems with weighted vests, especially for women, is that our center of gravity is not the same as that of a man. Men carry more weight just naturally in their upper bodies. So maybe these kind of, the Amazon weighted vests that everybody has that are weighted across the shoulders and the torso, that is biomechanically inappropriate for most women. Our center of gravity is lower. And, I've heard some talk about like weighted belts. That's something I think my dad had in the 70s. Like, I don't know how I feel about that, but it does make more sense for a woman to carry additional weight around like the waist and below, right? Because that's kind of where we carry more weight naturally in the first place, kind of in the center of gravity in the pelvis. So not only is like the load distributed inappropriately, but it also like we just don't see it in the literature contributing to any kind of meaningful increase in bone density, at least not the way these studies were structured. And I haven't dug into it all too much. I think maybe folks think they're doing it for bone density. Maybe they think they're just trying to make something that should be perfectly pleasurable more difficult, which is something human beings are really good at. But my feeling is like, you have to have really good postural integrity. You have to have really good gait mechanics. You have to feel comfortable in it. And you have to really watch for things like knee pain, shoulder and neck pain, things like that to ensure that you're actually getting at least some benefits from it or not suffering because of it. So I have not used my weighted vest in months. I have not let my husband use his in months just because I'm like, you look like a joiner. Like we're not doing that. So I
We're
just don't.
rebels now on the
We're
fourth
rebels
tendency.
now.
We're
I'm
done
no longer an
upholding.
obliger. And something that's more powerful
Upholding.
for bone density is jump training. This is something I think our favorite gal Sims has started talking about, which is great. So that appears to be a little bit more powerful, especially for women. Of course, wearing a weighted vest is going to marginally increase your calorie burn, but again, at what cost? Like golf is a good walk ruined. Weighted vests are like a good walk ruined also. I'm just not a fan anymore. I think we're majoring in the minors with weighted vests.
Got it. And so do you think like what you were saying with the calorie burn, because I asked Juliet about weighted vests and she had kind of this like, she was actually saying for deconditioned people, she thinks it might help a little bit, but she was like totally skeptical. So you guys have both kind of come to the center. Like she was totally skeptical and she's like a little bit more open and you were like gung ho and now you're more discerning. But because because I posted that like New Yorker cartoon with the woman who's like with the weighted vest and it's like as if as if the world wasn't hard enough, I decided to ruin my perfectly good walk with my weighted vest. And my neighbor and friend was like, I have one of those. And I was like, oh, why did you buy it? And she's like, well, she has two kids. She's like, I can only walk. So it feels like it's like giving me a better workout. And I was like, do you think it is? And she's like, well, she was kind of like, I don't know. She's like, I think she got her heart rate up a little bit, but she goes, it might also be like, just because I believe it does. I'm like, well, placebo is powerful. Like, don't discount placebo. But I guess I'm just saying for the average person who maybe is doing it to think it's going to help them lose extra weight, the same way you kind of gave us like an average caloric burn with like muscle is like 10 extra pounds of muscle is going to give you an extra 100-calorie burn the day. Like, what is the marginal difference? Marginal isn't the word. What's the extra calorie burn?
Yeah, I know this has been studied at least in some like pilot studies, I think, and it was a fraction. It was like 100. I can't remember, but I know I've looked at some of the papers that were kind of evaluating that metabolic bump, calorie burn from weighted vests, and it was like, to me, negligible. Maybe to somebody else, 100 calories here or there is like the game changer. And I understand it can be. But I was like, oh, I'm not going to ruin my whole walk and feel my shoulders have to do a full, 15, 20 minutes of recovery on my shoulders just to make something a little harder for me. What I would prefer to do and what I would
Is
probably
I know, Liz, a weighted kilt.
I would love a way to kilt. It- I think if people are walking and they want to make it harder, walk in a place where there's hills and sprint up the hill. Or end your walk with some hill sprints or something like that, because you're kind of adding that sprint, and you have to be careful about sprints. But there are other ways to make your life harder that don't involve
That'll give you more bang for your buck.
that will give you more bang for your buck than wearing a weighted vest. Now, I kind of look at this a little bit, and this is getting way far afield, like blood flow restriction, which there are really cool ways to use blood flow restriction. I'm about to get some Katsu bands, which I'm really excited about. Not because I want to be a biohacker, but because there's something that I could be wearing them right now. It would be something I would have to add, would have to go do and take extra time to go do. But this idea of adding the weighted vest to a walk, you could theoretically, just as the way people use blood flow restriction in resistance training, you could theoretically reduce the time you would need to work out and the volume that you would need to do in your workout and get the same results because you're kind of changing a couple of variables. However, if you're doing that at the cost of jacking up your back, your knees, and your neck, I would say find other ways to make yourself miserable. And sprint work is one of those ways.
Yeah. Or if you're new to sprint work, do the agility work. Or you talked about like getting the sideways steps they're not sideways steps. What is that?
Like lateral. Yeah,
lateral.
sideways
Yeah,
is good. I get it. I knew where you were going with that.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, train like an athlete. That's fun, right? For me, walking in a weighted vest is not necessarily fun. If you love it, do it. But the fun stuff is like that athletic stuff, because I really believe we are athletes. We're not necessarily professional. We're not professional athletes, but everyday life is an athletic pursuit. And so if we can train a little bit and add some of that fun stuff in, like CrossFit really, this is what I was going to say earlier. I feel like CrossFit was powerful, not just because it had people training in really athletic ways and it was fun. People had fun with that, but also because I think people overstate the value of CrossFit in the community aspect. And what was really going on there was not just community, not that just that we were doing something fun, but it was that, boom, Ali Shapiro, we were putting on new identities as athletes, right? We started to think of ourselves in a different way. So that identity is powerful. And if you can start looking at yourself that way as an athlete and incorporating some of that fun stuff, that stuff that we used to enjoy when we were kids, the bounding and the leaping, like we can call it that. We don't have to call it side steps. Like we can call it leaping or bounding or jumping or whatever, those things that holds so much more power, in my opinion, than a weighted vest walk.
Yeah. I was thinking when you were saying we train like an athlete is again, when people apply that perfectionist view to being an athlete, right? They think it means I get up at 6 a.m, like doing, and that's why I'm glad. I mean, you've kind of talked around that, today. It's like, it doesn't have to be that. It can be, I go and volunteer 3 days a week with the animals for 3 hours and I lift heavy shit there. And it's
I
like,
coach
how am I?
soccer practice. I'm like, there's a whole nother level of athleticism and coaching,
Yeah.
Preschool soccer.
Oh, I play Monster and chase Essa up the slide and down the slide and don't throw out my back.
There you go.
I'm an athlete.
Yes.
Monster's a game that you just are the monster and you chase kids around.
Yeah. It's a very
on the
simple game.
playground.
Very, very,
Yeah.
Not hoity-toity.
But no, I know they asked for a volunteer the other day at soccer practice and Essa's like, Mom. And I'm like, okay. But that was an example of like, I'm so glad I work out because it was only 10 minutes, but I was like chasing the kids. I mean, I was out of breath afterwards, but it was like, I could just do it. Like that's freedom to me, is having those choices of like, I can keep up with that. But I think that's what I just want people to think of, like athleticism. And you've talked about it. It's flexibility, it's mobility, it's agility, it's quality muscle. right? It's having fun. I think that's something I've rediscovered in my 40s, it's a CrossFit like gym where I started. I don't go there anymore, but had like counted myself out, like, of, oh, I'm over 40, all that stuff. And I was like, no, we've been, we're thinking of that LL Cool J song. Has been singing it this morning on the matching game. We played this matching game, and he was winning. And I was like, oh, I'm coming back. And then I sang LL Cool J's. I'm like, don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. And so all morning, S is like, don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. So all of you who have gone through the dieting trends, you've run, you've step aerobic, and maybe you've, quote unquote, fallen off. Don't call it a comeback. You've been here for years. You're just have to reimagine what athleticism is.
Yes. Yes. And if you're in your 40s, 50s, like, damn, if there's like, it is an amazing time to recapture that. It really is. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Focus on what feels good. That's the key. So
But I love what you said a minute ago about choice, that this is why I work out, and you've given yourself that choice. And choice is really, really important to the nervous system. When we have no choice, that can very easily put us into that fight or flight, that unsafe mode. And in moving your body and in developing that part of you, you are gifting yourself a range of choices that maybe you didn't have previously. And that is just another way to establish that nervous system safety that resonates into every other area of your life.
I love that, because so much of my work is about agency and realizing, where did we have choice before, where everything was black and white, all or nothing, either or. So I didn't know that the nervous system feels safe with choice. I thought I just loved it because I like to be in charge, but that's good to know. Liz, thank you. So this was just such a good time. Where can people find more about you, and tell them about your great podcast too?
reallizwolfe.com will take you somewhere that is related to me. We're working on changing the Instagram handle right now because I've been Real Food Liz for 50 years. And I got my little blue check mark before they were selling them. And so for some reason, Instagram is not letting me change my handle, but I've been working on that for a while. You can also find me on the Ideal Age podcast, which we'll have you on here pretty soon as possible, Allie, if you're free. But yeah, try Real Liz Wolfe. It'll take you, you'll find me. We'll guide you appropriately from there.
Yeah, well, and there'll be links in the show notes. So,
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
and I have a fitness app. I can't believe I didn't mention that previously. This is what a great salesperson I am. I do have the Ideal Age Fitness app. I have multiple 6-week programs, all oriented around sort of that well-rounded approach to fitness, where we're kind of digging in deeper on, there's strength, there's athleticism, there's buns and guns. Those are my personal favorites. And so we have quite a few different things to choose from, as well as mobility programs. And we are just building out our ideal interval programming, which is 3 to 7-ish minutes, short duration interval training that is created to induce the most favorable outcome for like your heart rate variability, your cardiovascular conditioning. We're implementing that in a really thoughtful way for women in their 40s and beyond.
That is wonderful. I think you saying to people, like, I consider myself conditioned and I go to the gym 2 to 3 days a week and walk, 3 to 4 hours a week. I think that's going to be like that. I mean, a perfectionist mindset would say that's it, right? Like,
right?
But it's like, no, that's enough.
I would have said that too. And, we know that if you do too much, it actually has the opposite effect. So sometimes like the art and the science is actually in the rest, is actually in being brave and bold enough to stop and not do something for a little while.
So check out Liz's app, because she's got you for smart programming. Thanks so much, Liz.
Oh my God.
For being here.
I love being here anytime.